the ultimate seating chart. Now, if you ever look at, have you seen my seating chart? How crazy I go on mine?
I haven't seen the seating chart, but I've been in your class before, and I've seen where it's pretty much boy, girl, two by two.
I actually wasn't planning. Well, you're right. I have mine the way the kids are grouped.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of have mine in rows, and
Yeah.
so that was the first thing. The first thing, and I looked at yours, and you pretty much. I was trying to think how would I do it differently, but I don't think I really would do it too much differently. I mean, it's fine. So my idea was, I look at the room, then I try to figure out the shape of it and where I can put the desk, and there's only so much you can do with what you got.
Right.
I think an ideal world, as much as I'm old school like, I think I would like to have them just in rows, just by themselves, but I can't do that size-wise, so I grouped them in pairs. But definitely everything has a certain element to it, a certain strategic plan to it. And how I start off my school year is I group all the kids in the middle as much as I can, and then as kids behavior-wise deteriorate somewhat, I move them to somewhere away from the group of everybody else. So they're somewhat, I'm not sure the right term's isolated, but they're not influenced as much on somebody else.
Okay.
So with your class though, it's a little tougher though because you got the tables, and so you're gonna have kids with each other pretty much all the time.
Not only that, but like they're big groups, except for one period. They're at least 31 to 33.
Yeah, so you got to pretty much use everything.
Yeah.
All right. So with that said, then, so strategically, what your homework's going to be is to actually create the seating charts. But we're just going to throw some ideas out here.
Okay.
How would I think would work well? So the first thing you want to do is make sure the kids that are more explosive, reactive, they're not near each other.
Yeah.
And I think you already have an idea of some
Yeah.
kids in each class. And so we talked about it. And so I would think probably the best solution would definitely have them not at the same table. And I would do the four corners of possible, which I think you kind of done already.
Yeah.
Separated in four corners. And another thing I was thinking about is maybe, and I don't know if the numbers work out, because I was thinking there's one table you can have free. Maybe this table nobody sits at. And as kids pop off, or a certain kid or two, you can selectively put them here by themselves. It doesn't necessarily change anything because they're still going to act the way they act. But that would be like an intervention, I guess you would call it. Moving seats, right? So if they're with a group of friends over there and you move seats just to another group where they're around other people, you're still gonna have the same exact problem because they're with other group of people. This one, at least they're more isolated. It's kind of like the next level, I guess you would call it. But I don't know, do you have enough room for all that, you're thinking? You do the math there.
Not really, but the other issue is that as time went on and kids started becoming a problem, like I tried moving them around and they'll get real stubborn about they don't want to move.
Yeah.
I like it here so I can misbehave and talk to my friends or be off task.
Yeah.
So it became, I had the same issue last year. The kids were very stubborn once they got settled. I wanted to do like a rotation, like at least once a month to move them around so they can get used to the idea. But
this year
was shot.
So here's the question. Go back to our expectations that we had up yesterday. For me, that's defiance, right? If you ask them to move, they don't move. Stubborn. So when you try to move a kid, you got pushback on it.
Yeah.
The question is, where did it go from there?
First couple of times, call security, have them removed. But then after it happened the first couple of times, I thought, was that really necessary? And then I started rethinking a lot of the times when I call security,
Correct.
What would their parents think? What would they say? You know? And then I'm just like, there's some battles.
Some is not worth it, right?
It's not worth the trouble. I mean, so, you got to pick.
And so that goes back to our question.
That's something that,
that's what we're going to work on. And that's going to come to our third thing, which is progressive discipline.
Right.
Because, as we mentioned before, once we allow it to go, whatever we tolerate, that becomes the norm.
Yeah.
And then, so now the norm is they don't have to move, and so it's the slippery slope. But I know what you're saying. There's certain battles you want to pick and certain you don't want to. And so the whole idea is, what battles are we going to fight to keep the classroom where we need to be at? And so that's definitely, in my opinion, that's one we're going to have to fight, and we'll get to that. But there's going to be a certain way we're doing it, though. And so we'll talk about that probably Thursday. We'll talk about Thursday. Look at that part. So back to the seating chart then. So ideally, and what I want you to think about, ideally, where would each kid go? And so the strategy would be the ones that are really explosive or the ones that feed off each other. You got to separate. Like you mentioned that one class, those
Right.
girls. I think you've done this already.
Yeah.
We got to make sure to separate. And so we got to create the seating chart with that in mind. Also, I would even say even the kids that are less of an issue right now, but they're with their friends, I still would separate them because we're doing like a reboot here, you know, because it'll get to the point where we want to get to the point where we can have the class exactly where we want it to be at. So I would even separate those, so that if the thought goes to, you know, that if they're not too much of a problem, that's enough of a sign saying we got to separate them.
Yeah.
So I would think that is mine as well. So the homework's going to be to go through each class period, and as long as we get this done before break comes back. Each class period, definitely the real intense ones, probably the corners, and then the other ones that are somewhat of a click but not really too much of a problem, still separate those as
Right.
well. And so every seat's going to be strategically thought where it's going to be at. I'll give you an example. Like for me, like I said, I start my kids in the middle, strategically that way, because as the year progresses, I'll move a kid to a corner spot, so they're by themselves. And then I even think about if I have a kid coming into the class that I know is going to be an issue, or has a history of issue.
Like I just did. Yeah.
Yeah. Once again, I really know exactly where they go before they even come in. Even if that means I have to move some of the kids around. And I'm not sure this is a good thing or a bad thing. I don't change my seating chart the entire year. I start, whatever I start with, and now it changes because kids come in, kids leave.
Right.
I might have to move some kids around for interaction. So it's changing, it's always evolving. But for the most
But
part,
the original one is still.
it's pretty much the original one.
I've changed it at least 2 or 3 times, but I intended on doing it more often for this year. I just fell behind on it.
And the thought behind that was?
I didn't want to have the same problem as last year where kids get too comfortable in the same
That's true.
spot. I wanted them to get used to moving around.
Yeah.
Even like last 6th period, they're still at the same table, but I had them rotate clockwise.
Okay.
So kids that were here moved here, kids that were here moved
right.
here. So they're kind of expecting that
Yeah.
to move.
And so the idea was by doing that, then they expect, by doing that, when you do ask and when you do change the seating chart, it won't be such a disruption.
Exactly.
So
Instead of getting a lot of pushback from individuals, I'm like, okay, your table is going here, this table is going here.
All right.
It's kind of a compromise.
Yeah. That way you kind of give them the variety you're looking for, but the same thing, it's not 100%, not 180.
Yeah.
All right. Makes sense. But second semester, we're doing 180.
Because it was something I tried at the end of last year, and I got pretty good success with it because I had a bunch of girls here that were kind of like disruptive, and it's kind of, people trying to look at the notes and stuff, and they're being disruptive. So everybody in the front go to the back, everybody in the back go to the front.
Okay.
So
Flip-flop it.
we just flip-flopped it this way, and then if they were a little disruptive or talkative, at least they were here, not here, in front of the information that they needed.
Yeah, I can see that. Here's an idea. You're pretty much going to use all the tables, but the table, the one that, if you have room for it, like I'm thinking you got 4 sides here, right? If I had an issue with a student, I might put him here by himself on that side, right there, and then maybe somebody here, somebody here. Even that little bit of extra space will avoid some issues because you put somebody right next to them, stop poking, the jabbing.
Yeah.
Here, we'd actually have to physically get up or something really obvious to see. So when you create your seating chart, if you got room for that, think about that. Like you mentioned some of the kids before, make sure there's no one right next to them if possible. You have a smaller class, right?
Yeah.
So what I might do is I'd probably put him back there.
That's where I put them.
And then I would not put anybody to the left of, not right next to him. Yeah, I probably wouldn't put anybody next to him, and I probably would space it out a little bit. So maybe there's only one person across from him, maybe one person on this end here.
Yeah.
Now this may be even this, the detail you want to be. If there's 2 seats right here, and I assign the seat here,
Yeah.
he does not sit there. Because if I assign him here, and I have somebody there, and I have somebody there, that's enough. That's 1 chair space away. But if we let him to go, oh, okay, and he moves there, The next thing you know, he's messing with that kid
Yeah.
right there. So even to that point, even if it's at the same table, whatever chair it is, that's the chair they have to be in. It has to be designed that way. Otherwise, there's next thing you know, he's here. Next thing you know,
Yeah,
it's poking, and so
Okay.
every little detail like that, we want to plan it through. And I would even think, as your Chromebook cart is back there, that's going to cause some student, and your backpacks are back there, that might cause some interaction. So everything you could do to avoid it. I really liked how you, because I think initially you probably had your backpacks up on the cabinets, probably.
If they want to, yeah, there's plenty of space up there they can
Okay.
use.
I'm not sure that's a good idea because, like you mentioned, because then that leads into the sinks and leads into everything
Yeah.
else. So I like the idea that they're not really back there. I like the idea that the backpacks are over there away. Same thing with the Chromebook card. I think it's a good spot for it. So maybe even back there might be a better spot for the trouble ones because there's no reason
Well,
anybody has to go to them.
It's the water in the sinks that they.
But the idea, we're going to make sure if they're going to do it, they're going to do it no matter what. So the main thing is they're there, stay in your seat. That is it. That is it. As soon as they pop up, we call them on it right away. So that actually might be the best spot for the real trouble one, because that way, not next to the Chromebook cards, not next to the backpacks,
Or my desk.
or that's or even the door. So that might be the best spot for someone. But by the way, you have plenty of kids to choose from, so you just figure out where you want to put them at. So that's what I would recommend on the seating chart. For my seating chart, we're not even there yet, but I use my seating chart for everything. I use it to track bathrooms. I use it to track participation. I use it to track if they cell phone earbuds. Because my thought is if they see you keeping track of the accountability part, if they see you keeping track of it, they're less inclined to do it. There's still going to be some kids, we know those kids, they're going to do something no matter what.
Yeah.
But once again, our goal is that 90%. The 90%. As long as we get them on our side, then we're good. And that keeping track of things usually is enough of a deterrent that they're like, oh, wait a second. Because it's one thing to say, hey, can I go to the bathroom? And I say, you already gone 2 times this month. Are you sure you want to go? The fact that I say 2 times a month, they're like, oh, he's really keeping track of it. That has a little bit of power in itself. Get there eventually. We're not there yet. Right now, I just want to make sure we get the kids in the right spot, and then we can start tackling other things.
Bathroom is an issue, but it's not the top priority.
That's right. We're going to take one thing at a time. So that's going to be the seating chart. So the homework then, do you have time to do that tonight where you can create you have to do it right now?
Yeah, sure.
So
I was going to have a new one anyway because I even wrote on the board for them, so they have the expectation.
Perfect.
I always broadcast something like when it's going to be uncomfortable, like, hey, we have a test this week, or you're going to move seats on Monday, or
Yeah.
It takes the sting away from like, hey, guess what? We're going to do this today.
Yeah.
But if they know it's coming,
It's a little bit better.
it's way better. Yeah. If they have that expectation, oh, he wants us to do this, so
Okay.
they've had time to sleep on it and
the process, right?
and process it. I learned that a couple of years back. So yeah.
And it still amazes me. Kids go like, I didn't know we're doing this, or really? We
on
talk
the
about it every
board,
day.
yeah.
So okay. So that'll be our homework. The homework is create the seating chart. We'll look it over tomorrow after school. We got time after school, right?
Yeah.
Look it over tomorrow. And then tomorrow we're going to tackle, and this is going to be the big one here. It's going to probably take the most time, will be our warm-ups. So tomorrow we'll kind of go over the seating chart, but then the other part is we got to just really think what kind of best kind of warm-ups are going to be. I have a textbook. I think you don't necessarily have a textbook, but you have a resource of some sort, right?
Yeah, we have them.
You have those.
We don't use them much because there's going to be all kind of profanity written in them, and
My books have that too. I know what you're saying. I got what you're saying. But if you had something like that, that'd be a good way to go, because then you wouldn't have to recreate the wheel each time. You wouldn't have to think about what are we doing. These are the 4 things I'm doing from this book or something like that. Otherwise, it might take a little bit more work on your part. So the question would be, what would be some warm-ups you're doing currently? We'll talk about this tomorrow. So what are some warm-ups you're currently doing that you think work? And we'll tackle that tomorrow. What are some other things? But our goal for the warm-ups are going to be something that kids can do 7 minutes without them having to ask you a question about it, without them even having to have prior knowledge. Just what can they come in and do by themselves independently? There's no excuses why they can't do it. That's what we're looking for. And so whatever you can create like that is the
we
main
can. Those are not the warm-ups that they're used to, that they've been trained to do, but we can change the format
Yeah.
for,
let's do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I assume with the warm-ups they're trained to do right now, it's based upon what we learned yesterday
Yeah.
and
Reinforce the.
reinforce it and what we learned yesterday. And so the question would be is,
But I could expand on it, like, elaborate on something that you learned yesterday, or.
elaborate something you learned yesterday. And the kid says, well, I wasn't here yesterday. And that poses a problem.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't remember. They can always come up with, I
Yeah.
don't remember, I wasn't here yesterday, or something like that. And it kind of gives them that out of why they can't do
Right.
it, which then kind of allows them the justification to start misbehaving. But if something they can do, there's no question why they can't do it, then we know that the actions, the choices they make, their behavior is 100% on them. It's not because they can't complete the work, it's because they're choosing not to. So there's
Yeah.
no out. So as long as we have something like that, worst case of reflection, that's a worst case.
Yeah. Okay. So then, what did you do yesterday if you weren't here?
Something like that. So we want to have in our arsenal probably like 4 different, maybe 4 or 5 different, things we can rotate through, whatever that might be. And then when we come back, the week we come back, that is all we're going to focus on is those warm-ups. We're going to go through it. Not because it's important, the warm-ups, but because by doing that, we're able to create the culture, the expectations.
Yeah.
And during that time period, that is when we're going over expectations. That is when we're calling the kids out and everything else. But we'll talk more about that when we do. But so that's what we're going to think about tomorrow is the warm-ups.
Okay. Seating's hard to understand. It's the constant. Put your backpack away. No, they want to keep it on, or they're going to keep it down here by the feet. Yeah, that's the problem. And phones.
Okay.
Phones are constantly in the pockets, and they're
So the question is this.
So that's number 2. Phones and backpacks.
So the backpacks. So let's break this down. So the kids have their backpacks.
Not all of them, but there's enough that
Enough, right? Why is a kid not giving me their backpack?
Because their phone and their food is in it. And they're
and
constantly
food.
bringing food in here.
All right. So if they're not allowed to eat or look at their phones in class, why would they have their backpack?
I don't know.
Right? So if the reason is because they have the food and phone in there,
Yeah.
that means that the expectation or the kid's thought process is, in this class, I'm able to eat and look at my phone in this class.
Because I worked in San Bernardino for a while,
Uh-huh.
and there's a considerable amount of homeless
Yeah.
students there, and their personal property is like, that's all they have.
Yeah.
And they don't want you to take it away. And coming from that culture into here, it's like, should I force it, or should I
No.
not enforce it, or should
That-
I mean, I
That's,
don't know, man.
Well, and 100%, I would say not all the time, but 99% of the time, it's because they're pushing the boundaries. They're trying to see how far away they can get with things. And every time they get away with it, they push a little bit more.
Yeah.
So, boundary. Hey, he's not putting her backpacks on the front. Okay. Hey, now the backpack's there. Man, I'm gonna try something to eat. Okay, I gotta wait that. Hey, I'm gonna look at my cell phone over that. And so each time it's
progressive, yeah.
The beauty of it though is if we stop that first thing from happening, the backpacks,
Yeah.
then it stops everything else from happening. We're gonna get resistance. Best new semester, new rules. That's the best time to do it, right? Kind of like reset. But you are going to get resistance. So it's going to take about 3 weeks. And the 3 weeks is not for them to necessarily learn, but for them to finally believe, oh yeah, it's different this time. It's different.
Yeah.
It's that mentality. It's to change the thought process that, okay, the boundaries have been reset. And they're going to be pushing the entire 3 weeks. They're going to be pushing it. And so that's what we're going to work on, trying to case. The first 3 weeks are always the hardest because it's
Right.
just, and you know this already because you got to call home, this and that. So that's going to be hardest. But once we're consistent with it, we should see
A change.
that change. But that's what it comes. So back to the problem is the cell phones, the backpacks, because the kids have enough data to understand that, hey, we can do this and it's not going to be a consequence. And if it is a consequence, then it's nothing if it is a consequence, it's like no big deal because so-and-so got away with it or so-and-so did this and nothing happened to them, like, you know what I mean? And so we're going to get to that point. And like I said, there's always going to be still some of those kids that no matter what you do is not going to make my class. I still have kids pop off here and there, right?
Right.
So you're always going to have that. But the goal is not to get everybody. The goal is to get that 90%. And all you got left is that 3 kids that you have to deal with on a regular basis. That's where we're going to.
And then what do you do with them?
Then we follow the steps. Then we just follow the steps that the office asks you to do. We document, send to the office, document, send to the office, call home. We're still gonna have to deal one way or the other.
Yeah.
And there's other steps that we have, such as, maybe buddy teacher, send to the office or something else. And that's not, and I'll be honest with you, they kind of expect that. They know who the kids are. I mean, they know the kids. So that's not the issue. The issue is the other 90%.
Yeah.
And once those start popping up, then we're like, okay, something else we have to fix. So that's what we're going for.
Yeah.
And so I have no issue sending kids to the office. Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think. Yeah, was it yesterday? 2 days ago, sent a kid to the office. It was just, I forgot what it was. Don't drink in class. Hey man, put your drink away,
Yeah.
Put your drink away. I said, just put it in your backpack. I said, don't drink anymore in class, put it in your backpack. He goes, this drink? I let him know the whole testing boundary stuff, and yeah, put it away. And he goes, okay. And as he's walking, starts drinking some more. You're out. That's it. But I was able to do that because I don't have the other kids doing that. That was only one kid. And so because it's just one kid, then that's not a big deal, But when he's, but if you have to send 5 kids a day, then that's when they start questioning things. So, but we'll get there. We'll get there. All right. I know that's your biggest concern. I've done this already. I sent it to the office, but we're going to try a little different angle on it to hopefully make the difference. So homework, seating chart, have you have that all laid out, and then just kind of start brainstorming what kind of warm-ups can we do, and we'll take a look at any kind of material you have, maybe how we can use that, and then we're going to put a plan together as far as what the first week's going to look like when we come back, and then the Thursday we'll meet to actually talk about how we can deal with those kids that are, and they're going to happen, that are going to test the boundaries, how are we going to deal with that, and we're going to do a whole approach of that as well.